Okay, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome to Super Metroid Strat Chat, episode number 15. My name is Kipp, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, True Moss. Moss, are you there?
I'm here, Kipp. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's good to talk to you today. I know we haven't hung out much lately because we haven't had an episode since, I believe, like maybe last May or so.
Right, but we're back.
Yeah, we're back for some extra content now in quote unquote season 2. The major network decided to pick up our contract for season 2, so feeling good about that. So tell me a little bit about what you've been up to, since the summer.
Well, most of my summers are spent away at my cottage, and I did a little bit of Super Metroiding, but the only thing I really did was I got a new PB in any percent, and by the time I got back home to post it, there was like 15 people who had got a 43 in the same time. So this summer's been kind of a really interesting time for any percent. Actually, everybody's just like had a huge explosion.
Yeah, I think that probably came mostly from the Any Percent tournament. The community had a Any Percent tournament basically this summer, and saw a lot of people. Really, not even just at the top, but throughout the entire leaderboard, a lot of people making gains in their overall Any Percent time. So that was really cool to see.
Hmm. What's been going on with you?
Not much, man. Just working really hard. I traveled this summer. I was gone for about a month. I traveled through Croatia, which was like something I really enjoyed doing. I had never been there. And then when I got back, I started playing some more Super Metroid. The only kind of big update that I have in terms of Super Metroid was I started running a new route during the summer, and I currently managed to get a 43, which you saw on the stats at the beginning. And then I guess the main thing is I worked on low ice some more, and finally got a 51, which I was really excited about. And I ran low ice at a DreamHack marathon where they raised some money for charity. So it was really cool. A lot of the people came and donated. It was, really nice of everybody. So I've had a great time, man. Speaking of our times, just as a quick heads up before we get to the guest interview, we kind of talk about this at the beginning of every episode. True Moss and I show our stats in terms of our kind of times in a lot of the major categories at the beginning of the broadcast, just to kind of show that, we're two people that, are really interested in the game. We put in a lot of time, and we've, ran different routes, different categories, and we all have a lot of people that usually come in and ask us questions about strats and stuff. So we thought it would be a cool thing to just have like a show where we, talked about some strats and try to help some people out and answer some questions. So that's what we're here to do. But one of the cool things that has come from this show is we've managed to start to pull in some really cool people in the community to interview. And today I'm incredibly excited to welcome in Behemoth. Behemoth, are you there?
Hello, Kipp and Moss.
Hello.
Yeah, right off the bat, Behemoth, again, let me just say that we're very, very, grateful that you are willing to give us some of your time to come and chat with us. So it's really nice to have you.
Yeah, we've been looking forward to this one for a long time.
Nice. Yeah, it's no problem at all. Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
So we've got a lot of stuff to talk to you about. I mean, first and foremost, I don't know if you were aware of this, but I always put some of the main stats of whoever the guest interview is on the screen. And you have a pretty interesting one at the moment. I included your Any Percent, 100%, Spore Spawn RTA, Croc RTA, and then your stuff from Metroid 2. And all 6 of them have the number 1 by them because they're all the world records. So we've got a ton of stuff to ask you about, your Super Metroid play and stuff like that. But before we get into any of that, can you tell us a little bit about how you got into gaming at all? Like, I'm actually not super familiar with like in England, what systems came out when, what games were big, stuff like that. So can you talk us through a little bit about how you even got started into gaming, to begin with?
Yeah, I mean, I think like a lot of people, I started extremely young. Like in our family, we had some really old consoles like Commodore 64, which is so going back so far, I don't even remember like what that console was like. It didn't even work very well. And Sega Master System 2. Which had Alex the Kid built into it. So that was good fun. And then we got the SNES, obviously, in '94 with Super Metroid.
So let me ask you that real quick. Is it? Oh, I'm sorry. I think there's some bleed over. Is there like you started out on PAL, is that correct? Or like what kind of version did you play?
That's our region, so everything was just PAL back then when we didn't know any different. So
Gotcha. So was Super Metroid one of the first games that you played?
Not really. No, I think probably played a lot of games way before that. A lot of Sega games actually, like Sonic. A game called Transport. It was on the Sega Master System. That was good fun. Yeah, lots of different games. But yeah, Super Metroid was the big one. Like we didn't even know, there was no hype for that because we were too young to really get involved with the hype. So it was one of those things, we spotted it on the shelf in a shop. This was right before Christmas, and the game looked amazing. So we got it, and we got it for Christmas, played it, and loved it.
So
And at first, I just watched my brother play it for like months. It seemed like months. So I was watching him play.
that's the exact question I was about to ask. I grew up with two older brothers, and so I spent the vast majority of my very young childhood like watching them over and over and over play games, more so than I played myself. So did you have that similar experience?
Yeah. I was watching it from under the duvet, scary game and all that.
That's awesome. So what did you think? Like, how old were you roughly when you played Super Metroid casually for the first time?
Well, 94, Christmas 94. So it would have been 95 that I would have played it. So 7, I guess, for the majority of the time. Yeah.
Okay,
7
gotcha.
years old, maybe 8 years old. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm really sorry. I think is my voice coming through a speaker?
Yeah,
Might be coming through mine too. Let me see if I can turn you down as well.
Yeah, that'll help a little bit. So anyway, so you started playing Super Metroid, I guess, pretty early on in the process. Like, at what point did you come back to it and start like getting into speedrunning it? Like, was it even the first game that you did speedruns of, or how did you kind of get into speedrunning?
So all throughout the 90s, we loved the game. We played it on and off, but we were quite late to the internet in our household. So at first, like I went to like a friend's house in around 2003 or 4, and he just said, "Yeah, just browse the internet." So I browsed like Super Metroid, as you do, and I found game facts, and I saw some threads on like tricks, glitches, and sequence breaks, and it got me hooked. I was like, "Wow, this is pretty interesting." Then after that, I found YouTube. I saw Smokey's run. I saw Hotarubi's run, and I was really hooked from that point on. And then we got a PC ourselves in our house at like 2006-7, and then we got a Wii, and I downloaded the game for PAL, obviously, on the Wii, and that's where it all really started. M2K2, SDA, and the Wii. Yeah.
Okay, that's cool, man. So before we get too deep into a dive of Super Metroid itself, I have on your stat sheet here that you're the world record holder, and I think that's recently too, of Metroid 2: Return of Samus on Game Boy. And I actually watched you do some of those streams, and I think you might even have some world records in other games that maybe I'm not even aware of. So tell us a little bit about some of the other games that you enjoy playing, and why you like to play them. Is it because you like to take a break from Super Metroid, or exactly what do you find appealing about some of those games?
Yeah, I mean, the other game that's not on the page there is Turok 2. I used to play the original on the PC and obviously the N64, but recently a remaster came out, so I ran that for a bit. There's a community with that as well, and I'm a part of that community. And I previously had the world record in the hard mode any percent run. So that's the only other game I've really ran. But I've always been sort of semi-competitive in various other games. There's also a racing game called Split Second for the PC. And I raced some buddies on that. Actually, I haven't done that for a while because that community's kind of evaporated.
Okay, cool. Well, Moss, you want to ask a few questions?
I'd love to. I think the first thing I want to get into, like, it's going to be great to talk to you today about any percent. We're talking about any percent today, and obviously you're sort of seen as the father of New Route. But I want to start first with talking about your button layout. And I always use you as an example when people are talking about what button layout they want to use, or when they're asking me questions like that. It's that there isn't a right answer. And you're like the best example of how there isn't a right answer, because for anyone who is not aware yet, Behemoth's button layout is bananas compared to most people. And so I'm really interested in the genesis of how you first came to decide to use that layout, and if you ever kind of thought like, oh, this is, I'm sacrificing a lot, maybe I should try doing something a little more, conventional.
Well, I think it's like 2010 that I was really looking into a new button layout, and I had default before this, and it was actually Forensic 4N6 who told me that having select on L or R or whatever would be quite a good idea. So I tried it out, and it took like 2 weeks of adjustment, and it really wasn't that bad. Yeah, I don't think it's actually that wacky of a control scheme myself. It's kind of like default, but select is so much more accessible, and stationary angle down is not as needed as people might think, in my opinion.
Sure. So when you were first kind of working on, working around the fact that you don't have an angle down, I mean, like, were there any specific parts where you were like, I don't know how I'm going to be able to deal with this problem, compared to if I actually have an angle down control?
I mean, the first few places that you think of would be like construction zone. Instead of, you can't crouch and angle down and shoot the bricks, so I had to figure out going over the top. But then I've seen Tazzies do that anyway, but they just jump. So I'm not going to jump because it's too awkward. So I just decided jump through the door, land on the bricks, and then just aim down like that.
Sure.
There's always these little workarounds that a Super Metroid allows you to do. It's not like clean cut. You're forbidden from doing this because your layout sucks. It's a very good game in that respect.
Yeah, and I think that in a sense, the fact that you do have a different control scheme, it makes you like have to like willingly try to come up with your own way of doing things. And so when you're looking at the game in general, you maybe have just a different outlook on how to tackle rooms that maybe other people wouldn't naturally go for.
I agree. Yeah, you can also, I think, tell that somebody has a very different layout just by how they're playing as well, like how well they're able to wall jump. It could be that their jump button might be on Y or something, which is more accessible than perhaps A. Just a little tiny things like that.
Sure. Yeah. Can we get right into talking about some new route stuff?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So like some of the stuff on how new route came out, it's kind of, there's been some documentation on it. Anyone who hasn't seen Summoning Salt's world record history of Super Metroid, it's a wonderful video, so I recommend that. But can you talk through a little bit of the process and how you decided that this might be a viable option to completely change the boss order in any percent?
Sure. So I think it was about 2013 on Twitch, and I think everybody was kind of leaning towards there must be a new route. Well, we know there's another route. So, and that was the point where everyone was kind of just looking into it, and yeah, it was just from there we just looked into it, and yeah, I did a few save state runs at first. I did a KPDR save state, and then I did a PRKD one, and the very first save state run I did, PRKD came out 15 seconds faster.
On the very first one?
The very first one. And I could have just said, it's too difficult, let's just leave it. So I did it again thinking there's something to this. And the second one came out 45 seconds faster. Or was it 40? Mm-hmm. Might have been just 40. And that was the point I knew that it's definitely faster and it's worth pursuing. And obviously there's more to come because it clearly saves about 2 minutes now. So.
Sure. So at that time when you were first looking into it, was the low ice route already doing a Phantoon first path as well?
Yeah, it was.
Was that like an all kind of like influence when you first sort of saw that and thought, oh, doing Phantoon first is in fact, already possible in a different category. Maybe it would lend itself to any percent as well.
Well, I think the inspiration just comes from the any percent Taz's, because they were going Phantoon first anyway. They had everything all mapped out and figured out, so it was up to us to just try and do the same.
Were there any like big sticking points, like any rooms where like, I don't know how we're gonna solve this problem or how we're gonna do this consistently?
I think really just the moat, even though it's really not too bad now. At the time, it was just horrible. Just knowing that we have to try and do that CWJ or bomb jump. Then there was Phantom. We didn't know that we could sort of Doppler that well. Then the P shots to shoot all the smoke out on the eye opens, stuff like that. What else? I mean, Lava Spark. That was actually a late addition to the route, if I remember. I was just doing gravity jump at first.
Okay, terrific. Kipp, you got anything else to add?
Yeah, we got a lot to talk about here. As mentioned on your stats here, you currently have the world record in any percent and 100%, which are by far the two most sort of prestigious and competitive categories, in the entire Super Metroid community. So when talking about any percent, like I love having these conversations with people and just, talking about different options and things. But I kind of feel like to a degree, there's this this sort of misconception about new route and time save. And so I kind of want to get your opinion on it because a lot of people will look at, for example, you or some of the other like extremely elite players like Zost or Oates that have these incredibly fast times, and they'll say like, oh, we'll see, new route saves, this much amount of time, and so if you switch to that, then you can take your old route PB and subtract 2 minutes from it or whatever. When in reality, I feel like it's way more complicated than that. Like to get to the point where you can actually even go faster than your, sort of current old route PB, it requires a lot because of the attention to detail that the route, demands, so to speak. So what do you think about that, Behemoth, in terms of what was the transition like to the route and, how do you kind of see it as being somewhat different philosophically from old route?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was about the same, like my first completed PRKD runs were in the 47s, 46 sort of range. And my KPDR PB at the time was like 44. So, and then I whittled it down 45, 44. It took months, honestly. And I think it does for most people.
Yeah, it's I think because some of it's the same, like if you look at Meridia, it's not exactly the same, but there, are some things that translate pretty well. But Lower Norfair, for example, is drastically different. The beginning of the game, from Red Tower up through Phantoon's pretty drastically different. And it just takes a long time and a lot of repetition to get comfortable with a lot of that stuff, like you mentioned with Moat and stuff. So it's a huge challenge category. Can you talk a little bit about the role of RNG? And I don't necessarily just mean boss RNG, but like drop RNG, because it seems to me like the amount of time that you're allowed, or I guess the speed at which you're allowed to move is heavily influenced by the types of drops you get along the way. So can you talk about how this is kind of also a difficult run in terms of getting the right drops throughout different sections of the run?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, Phantoon obviously is the big RNG factor, but his drops can influence things just after that, like his power bomb drops. You can help yourself along the way with certain choices, like how you do the attic. If you don't use too many supers when you haven't got that many anyway. Just mix and match. There's various little things you can do to farm along the way. Yeah, like it's mostly boss drops are the big things you want to watch out for.
Okay, cool. And so, like, now let's get into your personal philosophy a little bit, because, this game is really difficult, but at the same time, it's a beautiful game. It's very challenging, and I think that's part of what keeps people coming back to it. Like, it's the type of game that you can put a ton of time into, and never really get bored. So, when you're going through the process of figuring out how you want to approach a category, for example, when I first started playing this game, you were in the middle of your 100% grind, and then you knocked out the 114, and then, shortly thereafter, eventually you got into the any percent grind, and you've been on that sort of off and on. So can you talk to us a little bit about, how you practice, how you approach a grind, and just sort of the things that you try to think about to try to make your, performances as consistent as possible?
I think with that philosophy, it all sort of stems from how I started speedrunning, because I was very inspired by Hotarubi, with his 32-minute in-game time run, and the way that he played, the way he moved and everything. So I was obsessed with trying to replicate that on the PAL version. I think that sort of stuck with me in trying to be as perfect as possible. Yeah, never really being satisfied. Whenever you get that good PB, it's like, damn, there's something else, Yeah. That's really just it, just keep pushing it and pushing it. Also being a little bit addicted to the game, let's be honest. Can't help it.
Of course. So, talk us through a little bit about 100% versus any percent. They're very, very different types of runs, obviously. And you went through this really long process with 100%, which I'm impressed by every run that you do, but I always kind of go back to the 100% run, and it kind of baffles me that level of play can be sustained for that long amount of time. Talk to us a little bit about just sort of the difference in maybe philosophy that you have when looking at a run like 100% versus something like any percent where you just got to take insane amounts of risk sometimes. So what was the process like for you to transition between the two?
Well, with 100%, it's actually in a lot of ways a lot easier because you haven't got like Phantoon and Ridley, these two big possible choke points. You haven't got the moat to worry about. There's a lot of things you don't have to worry about in 100% that you do in any percent. And you just treat it like this big obstacle course. Yeah, it's just, I can't really explain it, but 100% for me isn't too bad. Obviously, I'll go back on my words that it is a really hard category. But honestly, this any percent grind is, in comparison, much worse.
Oh, interesting. Is it just because of how tight the run is and how RNG plays a part, or why do you feel like the any percent is so tough?
Yeah, I think all the above, and also just I think we've taken it even further than 100%. Quite honestly, I think 100% can probably go as low as 113. So there's a bit of time to play with. Yeah, I mean 100% is very show offy. It looks amazing, all the room strats. But it's just, I don't know. There's something very casual about your progression in that run that doesn't make you fret so much. Any percent PRKD is very, very scary run. It's like doing low percent on steroids.
Yeah, you're right. It is. So, okay, let's just have a little fun here with some Super Metroid stuff then. So, I've mentioned to you before that, because you and I actually were able to race each other twice in the any percent tournament. And I mentioned to you, I think privately, that basically I've stolen a lot of your strats. I've studied your runs and I've taken a lot of things that I do directly from you. So what are some of the strats that you have come up with, or modifications to strats that you've come up with in any category that are some of your favorite, just in terms of you think they're fun or really cool?
Gee, that's a tough question. I think the Ninja Pirates before Ridley, at first we were sparking we were sparking one and then shooting the other one with supers. That proved to be a bad idea because obviously you're going to waste a lot of supers. So at the cost of a few seconds, it's actually much better to spark both. Bomb jump across the moat. I mean, that's everyone knows that one. That's what I was doing at first, I think. I have to think about that. That's tough.
Well, two of my favorites are number one, you mentioned Construction Zone earlier.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, I love that one. I actually use it even though I have my L mapped to angle down. I just for whatever reason I just never really enjoyed or liked the down back method, so I started using yours, and it's really cool and a lot of fun. And then one recent addition to my particular runs that I believe is a relatively new one for you too. The bomb, dropping a regular bomb inside of Wreck Ship Shaft on the way down to Phantoon, and then down backing before you get down to the green door. Is that relatively new? And did you come up with that? How did you add that to your run?
Yeah, that's very new actually. That came about because I used to use a power bomb because everyone else has angle down, so they can get rid of the rubble without a power bomb. So, and that caused problems after Phantoon. If you didn't drop enough power bombs, then I'd be screwed trying to get out. I have to have a slow escape. So yeah, that came about from that. And yeah.
Yeah, that one's really cool. I like that a lot. And I had not actually thought about the fact that that was one of those spots where not having L mapped can cause trouble. But yeah, that makes perfect sense. Okay, I actually have a few more questions about strats and stuff, but Moss, I want to get you in here too. Do you have any kind of follow-ups or any other things that you wanted to ask Behemoth?
Yeah, actually, I'd love to talk about the work robot strat in Hundo. I remember hearing that it's actually originally a Reeve strat, but I only originally first saw it executed by you. So I'd love to hear how that strat first kind of came around.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure who came up with that one, but yeah, that room is notoriously a problem. The get me through room. Is that what it?
Yeah.
Put me through room. Yeah. But yeah, I found if you just roll through them, it's actually much easier. Like you would mitigate a lot of the blockages from those robots.
Oh, I was actually referring to the bowling robots.
With the bowling robots. Yeah. I further on. Yeah. That was that's a Taz strat, I believe, and we just decided to investigate. Yeah, I think that was a Reeve strat. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I started working on it. The biggest thing I always found really challenging about it is just you have to wait until the end of bowling to see if you actually landed it properly or not. So it's like a very delayed response on if you actually are doing it well.
You can hear the shots connect, but that
true.
doesn't always tell you if you've succeeded or not, if I remember correctly.
Well, what else you got, Kipp?
Okay, so I want to broaden this just a bit, Behemoth, because I think your stats, like your times, your PBs, kind of speak for themselves. But I sort of have this philosophy about the way I approach the game that I kind of see, like sometimes when I see how you run, especially in like tournaments and stuff, like I can kind of see that you're thinking about some of the same things, and it's like, there's one sort of philosophy about pursuing a PB for a leaderboard, but there's kind of a different way to play when you're in a setting where you have to race somebody and, the situation's a little bit different, right? And it's not, and it's just like, it's not like you can reset and, get your best time. Like you have one run and that's all you have. So, you've won multiple tournaments. You won the 100% tournament, I believe, in like roughly February, March or so of last year. You were the winner of the 80% tournament this summer. Can you talk a little bit about just, what you're thinking about? Like, I'm sure, you're so good at the game and you have so much experience that, you can kind of play things relatively straight up and still do fine. But do you ever make any mental adjustments at all, when you're thinking about racing somebody, especially somebody who's either, significantly slower than you, or when you're facing somebody who, is one of those elite players that, it could kind of go either way?
I actually get equally nervous. No matter who the opponent is, I just get nervous about races. Yeah, I mean, you have to think about, getting sniped or just outright killed. So you do take certain things a little bit safer than you would perhaps in a PB attempt. Like, for example, against Ridley, I always avoid morphing under the tail just to save some seconds. But in a race, if my health's getting sketchy, then I'll bust out some morphs, to stay alive, things like that. And at first, during the early part of the tournament, I would collect like Ridley's energy tank so I could escape low Norfair as best as I can. But once I built up a little bit of confidence, I started to, take that away. And some runs I actually did 15-10 3 tank. And I think one of them was actually an accident because I was so used to jumping over the missile pack near wave beam. But yeah, the last run against Oates was actually, that was all planned, 15-10.
Yeah, and that was a fantastic race. I really enjoyed watching that a lot. And obviously, anytime that you race and some of the other big guys, a lot of people come and watch. So, for someone like me, who streams to like maybe 15 or 20 people, what's it like sometimes when you're in the middle of these, 80% world record attempts and that you have like hundreds of people watching, or sometimes even like 1,000 or something? Like, does that ever factor into your mind frame, or do you just not think about it and just kind of do your thing?
Sometimes having people watch actually gives you that motivation. It's never any easier getting those kind of paces. But when I'm on those kind of like 27 paces, I'll probably close chat and it becomes a really solitary experience. To try and keep calm. But any other run, I'll just keep chat open. But you get more and more used to it, I think.
Cool. Well, I do have one kind of final question. Actually, I have one final question about philosophy. But before I do that, since this is a Super Metroid thing, and there's a ton of people that love all things Metroid, you are the world record holder of any percent no out of bounds and 100% no out of bounds of Metroid 2 Return of Samus. And unless I'm mistaken, I'm not super familiar with the game or the speedrun other than what I've seen from you. But if I recall correctly, I'm pretty sure that when you returned to those, like, you took them really seriously and you actually smashed the records pretty big. So what was that process like? Did you enjoy it? Was it, nice taking a break? Or, what about that game is kind of cool if you were going to tell somebody to look into doing it, casually or even, to compete with it?
Sure. So I actually speed ran that game many years ago, like 2010, 11, as well as Super Metroid. And I left it alone with like a 57. And I put it on the shelf on the back burner to return to. And it just so happened I came back when just after he had a 56, I believe. I always wanted to take the game as seriously as I did. And it was a lot of fun, actually. That game is kind of underrated. There's a lot of interesting mechanics especially with the damage boosting. I do recommend it, but it's nothing like Super Metroid. No.
Yeah, watching you was really fun because I actually had that game on Game Boy when I was a kid, and I think it's like one of the only Game Boy games that I actually still have. So when I saw you playing it, I was like, man, I need to check that out. That looks pretty cool. So maybe one day I'll scope it out, and we'll bring you back on for Metroid 2 Return of Samus Strat Chat.
Yeah. Actually, Behemoth, I wanted to get one last question in about. I kind of forgot to ask it, and then you started talking about Ridley fights, and I wanted to get your input on entering Norfair with an X Factor style, or going in your way where you don't switch and you keep ice on and Spazer on through basically all of Lower Norfair. Do you have any kind of input for someone who's new? Because like when I was first going through Lower Norfair, I kind of tried one way and I swapped and tried a different way, and I kind of bounced back and forth a little bit. So I'd love to hear your input on it.
Yeah, I think the main consensus is that X Factor puts Ridley in a state that's more sort of comfortable for the player in his sort of mid-battle stage. In terms of actual time save, I think in terms of real time, it's not a huge deal. It's maybe a couple of seconds at best. But game time, it does save a lot. But if you're just used to just not X Factoring Ridley, I'd stick to doing that.
Is that the reason were you just used to not X Factoring him? And you just never decided to change, or?
Yeah, I mean, I did try X Factor once. Yeah, it's quite good. Mm-hmm. I did it with like I did 3 X Factors, 12 missiles and 10 supers. And I did like a 68-second fight, I think, room time, which Ice Beam can't really do. It can't go as low as that. But you have to add on the elevator time pause before you enter Lower Norfair. So
yes, definitely.
It kind of almost breaks even real time, actually.
Cool. Well, Behemoth, I've got one final question for you, and I want you to take as long as you want to talk about this. Like, consider this a really big open-ended question, and feel free to, wax poetic as much as you want. But, I think there's many ways to approach speedrunning in general, but in particular this game. This game is incredibly complicated. There's a lot of complex physics, and it's like in terms of like even what you have to do to run the game, like you have to use like the entire control in a way that you don't necessarily see with a lot of other games, and so there's all different kinds of ways to approach trying to get better and lower your times in different categories and stuff like that. Personally, I feel, and I've always felt this since the beginning, that until you get to a really high upper echelon of skill, it's probably better to just try to do as many, like after you do some practice and you're at, the point where you want to try to pursue a PB, I think it's better to just, for the most part, do runs. And once you're in a run, just try your best to complete the run. That means you're going to have a lot of runs that aren't on PB pace, but I kind of feel like over the long haul, as you develop your skills, you're going to get more accustomed to the flow, how, mid and late game, things come together where you're comfortable with those when you're actually on a good pace and stuff like that. And I've noticed even in your grind for, any percent world record and your continued grind to lower the time, you still, regardless of the fact that you might not be right on PB pace or whatever, a lot of times you finish a lot of runs. So if you were talking to people who were, either A, kind of brand new to the game, or B, still developing and trying to lower their times, what would you say specifically? Like, do you somewhat agree with that, or do you kind of have a different approach? And you can just talk about anything in terms of, how to get better as a player. What would you recommend to people out there?
I think no resets are generally the way to go at first, and you can continue doing that as well. But I think you need to mix and match them. If you're going to have a long stream, there comes a time where enough's enough. I've made too many mistakes. I need to reset. But as someone said in chat, like you need the viewers to be entertained as well, and it's good to have a full runs on show. You need to practice the whole game from start to finish as much as you can, because if you don't, then you're just going to be out of practice and you're going to probably choke. But I would say eventually you have to sort of mix it up a bit. You do have to do some no resets eventually.
Sweet. So any other general pieces of advice for especially newer players? Like you and I were talking before we went live, and you were kind of talking about how, man, it's been a while since I thought about, how I got started with everything. So if you were just to give a few pieces of general advice to people to continue to get better at the game in general, what do you think would be kind of the best methods or the best things to focus on?
I'll tell them to don't worry about all the really swaggy hard strats, because the time saves from them aren't as good as you think. And honestly, swag is overrated sometimes, in my opinion. So just work on the easy strats first. Try and mitigate mistakes and try and finish runs. And your confidence grows from finished runs, not just completing a segment well or a room particularly well.
Makes perfect sense to me. We've talked pretty extensively on here about how sometimes the quote-unquote big tricks are not really the thing that's going to save you the most time, especially when you're getting started. I always use full halfy as an example. People see full halfy, when they're first getting started and they think it looks awesome. And let's be honest, it does look cool, right? And it's a tough trick. But grinding that one trick for a bunch of time is probably going to be not so great for you. If you invested more time in some of the simpler rooms and cutting your time down there, you'd probably gain more. So I totally agree with you. But Behemoth, once again, dude, thank you so much for agreeing to come on and taking your time to come and chat with us and just tell us a little bit about your approach to the game. And on top of that, as I watch your stream a lot. Moss comes in too. We're big fans of the stuff that you're doing. So we wish you continued success. Good luck with the grind, and we're looking forward to seeing what you do in the future.
Thanks very much, guys. Thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Well, we'll say goodbye to Behemoth. Once again, thank you so much, dude. And at this point, we're going to jump into our strat portion of the show. So for me to do that, I have to leave the call here with Behemoth and True Moss, and then I have to call Moss back and get something set up for our stream. So I will go ahead and change a few of the things here on the scene. All right. Hopefully that should bring up my game. And let's see if we can get True Moss on the call here. And today's episode, we're going to talk about some key core rooms in New Route. We know that there are a lot of people out there that have kind of messed around with doing fan tune first, and we've done a lot of old route stuff in the past. So looks like I need to fix my game feed real quick. Let's see if I can get it going here.
You can hear me, Kipp?
I can hear you. Let me get my game feed fixed. There it is. Okay, no sweat. And Moss, let me see if I can get you pulled up. Yeah, I think everything looks good. So I've put it on your scene so we can see your camera and your footage here. So yeah, just to kind of reiterate real quick, for anybody who's new, every time that we do a Strat Chat episode, we try to go through, different rooms and show different strats, not just like whatever's the most sort of optimal thing for our current skill level, but also try to gear things towards showing that you have different options, showing how newer players can approach some things. I just want to give a quick caveat. I personally, I'm not going to speak for Moss, and I can't speak for anybody else in the community, but I personally, would not recommend a brand new player to start with any percent new route. I kind of feel like old route is a much better sort of entry into the game. I don't think old route is easy necessarily, but it's just that some of the general skills that you can develop while you get comfortable with the game and understand how everything works is a little bit better. But at the same time, there are people out there that have only run new route from the beginning. So I'm not saying it's something that's impossible, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. So to that degree, or to that point, we do have a lot of old Strat Chat episodes that have already covered a lot of old route stuff. There's a collection of Strat Chat episodes. There's 14 episodes. A lot of our episodes covered old route stuff. We covered some general techniques for fighting bosses. We've covered some 100% stuff. So today we're going to focus not on... Oh, I'm sorry. I'm coming back through the speaker. Okay. So we're going to focus not on all the rooms, but just some of the really core rooms that can be some of the most difficult, trying to help people understand how to best, approach at least getting through them. Maybe not necessarily optimizing them, but at least getting through them to where you can complete the run. So Moss, I'll turn it over to you. We're going to start with Red Tower.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I would say, we're going to assume that you have a basic idea on how to play this game. We're not actually doing all the rooms, all the strats, how to do the strats. There's a lot of good players here today. Feel free, post your opinions on when you would recommend to switch, what time you should get in old route to move to new route. I think a general good rule of thumb is get a sub 50 before you want to consider moving. But there's a lot of opinions on it. So feel free to post your own personal opinions or your own personal experience. I switched it. I think I got a 45 before I switched to new route. So everyone's a little different, and feel free to add your opinions, everybody. So we're gonna kind of attack as many of the, I guess, iconic new route rooms, and we'll start in Red Tower. This is essentially where the route starts splitting. There's a number of ways to do it, but I think one thing to kind of remember about the Red Tower is that if your charge shot actually moves a little bit slower than a pea shooter, a regular shot. So if you're having trouble trying to chase your shot up the wall, like trying to do a hero shot to hit this, doing a charge shot actually can often make it a little bit easier. The strat I use to get up here is actually something I learned from Oats and Goats. I'm not sure if he still continues to do it. It looks something like this. Oops. So let me do it one more time. The idea is I'm actually starting a charge shot after jumping off of this wall and normally shooting up. So like I was saying before, there are a number of ways to get up. This is just the one that I found the most consistent for me. One of the issues is it's very easy to shoot, to kind of try to rush too much and actually hit this ripper on the way up. Looks like I need to warm up, everybody. So yeah, just shooting off of this wall, and as soon as this guy gets out of the way, just two wall jumps up, and try to usually jump somewhere in between these two growths on the wall here to get up here. So in this range, somewhere here is usually where I would kind of do it to wall jump up. Probably the fastest strat is the one that I usually see Zost use. I think 2Cat uses it as well, where essentially you get up here as quick as possible, and you're going to do a shot on the right side of this ripper and chase it up, jumping on the left side. So your shot and your jump kind of go around this ripper. I'm atrocious at it. I'll see if I can even get close to doing it once. But one of the things that it means is you actually get to move up a little bit faster, because you don't have to wait for the ripper to get out of your shot way. And you actually get to come up this wall a little faster because you get to go up the left side as well. It sort of looks like that. Like I said, I'm not very good at that strat.
That strat is really tight. It's really hard to do.
It is really hard to do. And the timing on when to shoot so that you actually don't hit this ripper. I'm hitting this ripper a lot right now. It actually takes a lot of practice. And for me, I don't find that unless I can get it with like a lot of consistency, I wouldn't really recommend it, because if you miss the shot, it usually takes like 4 seconds or so to recover. So if I go up and let's say I miss the initial shot, then I have to climb up here, do the shot this way, come back down, and work back up again. So it's an extra wall climb all the way up. It usually takes about 4 seconds more if you miss the initial strat. So try to make your initial attempt count is what I would usually recommend. That's pretty good. Kipp, do you do it in any different way from the way I'm doing it?
Yeah, I'm going to switch over to my scene real quick and show you guys. So before I kind of go through my method a few times, let me just kind of sort of mention something that Moss talked about. You know, here at Strat Chat, what we want to do is we want to try to encourage people to, you know, potentially use some of the methods that we talk about if they think like it fits for them. At the same time, though, you know, in every single category, every single route, every single room, sometimes you just got to figure out what will work best for you. You know, a lot of times I'll be streaming and people will come in and be like, you know, did you know that Behemoth and Oats or Zost, you know, does X-Strat? And a lot of times I want to say like, yeah, I'm aware, but you know, like I'm not one of the best players in the world. So there's a reason only 3 people currently, and you know, a few others are knocking on the door. There's a reason that only a few people have a 41 in this game. You know, to be able to run every single, you know, most optimal strat is very, very difficult. So I would really recommend just, you know, playing with the rooms and figuring out kind of what's going to get you where you need to be. There are a lot of rooms like this one where philosophically, I don't really worry as much about trying to optimize this room. Like, I don't necessarily practice to get the lowest, you know, frames possible in this room. This is one of those rooms where, and a lot of the ones we're going to cover today are basically like, you know, I just want to make sure I successfully get through it, because if I mess up or miss, the penalty is massive. As Moss mentioned earlier, if you miss this room, like if you fall down, the number of seconds that you lose is pretty large. So my method is I pretty much just go on the left side most of the time. Like I will wall jump off of this little guy right here, and I never do a full charge, but I'm fairly confident that even if you don't reach a full charge, that your little pea shooter shot coming from a charge actually moves slightly slower, and so I find it a little bit easier to chase him up the wall. So my method is I come in the room and I get right here and I start charging. As soon as that ripper's out of the way, I try to do 2 wall jumps to get the shot to hit, and then I do 1 final wall jump to get up here. Now, one thing I will say, I'm not necessarily going to show you the next room because there's a lot of different ways to do it, but one thing that I do at the end of mine is I start to hold a charge shot. It depends on what method you want to use when you go into the Hellway, but I like to farm the next room, and for me to be able to farm it, I have to have that charge shot, you know, kind of queued up. So I just follow my shot here, get up as far as I can, and then when I enter this room, I'm already charging my shot. That way I can pull off the farm method here, okay?
Yeah, that farm is very common in low ice. I mean, we're using pretty much, with the exception of skipping 1 item, this is all low ice that we're doing right now. And if your luck doesn't hold up through the first part of the game, being able to farm an extra set of missiles or an extra set of health in this room can go a long way, especially in low ice, but I would say also moving into Fantoon in New Route as well.
Yeah, correct. And so that's the basic premise of Red Tower. You know, this is going to be a room you're going to want to look at pretty extensively if you're transitioning from Old Route, because the places on the wall that you want to jump from are very different. It feels a lot different than Old Route in terms of, you know, how you approach this room, because in Old Route you have high jump boots. So one final small nuance here is when you're coming to this ledge right here, you know, you kind of have 2 options. You can just straight up spin jump to it and then try to ledge grab. A lot of times you'll see people go ahead and break their spin by holding R or maybe even L, and then what they end up doing is they get a little bit of a ledge grab that way. So just depends on what, you know, you find comfortable. And yeah, you want to take it from there?
Sure,
And and we'll go back to you for what's the next room we're going to cover here?
I think we're gonna go straight into like the pre-moat and doing the moat as well.
Cool.
Yeah, I think the only other thing to kind of mention about this room is that, you know, I said it takes about 4 seconds off to come up here and shoot. But if you're not planning to wait on this Ripper to shoot up and try to hero shot, you don't take as much time. So if you're going straight up and your plan is I'm just gonna shoot the top, come back down and wall jump up again, you may actually not lose as up to 4 seconds. It might be like 3 seconds. So it's a good example of something that you, as a runner of Super Metroid, you need to always be considering, which is risk management. You know, am I risking 10 seconds to potentially save 1 second? And it kind of depends on your consistency, of course. But if you find that you're inconsistent doing the hero shot, and you're going to lose 4 seconds most of the time, skipping that, going up right away, and only losing 3 seconds compared to hero shotting is a more consistent strategy. So it's something to consider at all times when you're speedrunning this game, is risk management, basically. So let's get into, let's take a look at the moat. The moat is terrible.
Yeah, the moat is basically like
it is.
It is the room of New Route. I mean, there's a lot of rooms that are very tough and that can ruin your run, but this is the choke point that everybody thinks about when they first start running New Route. It's the thing I would say that keeps some people from even wanting to attempt New Route, which is totally understandable. So we'll talk a little bit about different methods and the simple reality. One small thing I just want to say before Moss starts going into this stuff is a lot of times people will ask me questions. Moss, I'm sure it's the same with you. And I remember asking people like Sloters this in the past, and sometimes the answer would be, you know, the best thing I can tell you is just you're just going to have to do it a bunch of times. You're just going to have to sit down and grind it a bunch of times until you feel it. So we can try to help you understand what is happening, but there's no way to get these strats consistent without the muscle memory, and there's no magic formula. All it is just sitting down and grinding it out. So Moss, go right ahead, buddy.
Okay. So we'll do a little bit of talking about how to get into the moat. There's a number of ways of setting up, but I'll just show the way that I do it. I learned this from Oats and Goats a long time ago. I think he's changed his strat at this point, but I come in usually wall jumping off of that wall. I actually did not do it. Let's try that again. So I wall jump off this wall in order to ledge grab my way up. And I come up here and I lay a powerbomb right on top of this platform. So it does open the door down here. I do it right here, and then I unmorph and from a crouch position, jump straight up to down grab up here. If you do it from a standing position, we've talked about this in previous strat chats, that a crouch jump, actually, it starts you, I think, 5 pixels, maybe 8 pixels. I can't remember exactly, higher than where you would if you just do a regular jump. So it means a regular jump, you won't be able to get up here, but if you're crouching, doing a down grab will work. So coming off of laying a power bomb, it's a really nice place because you have to unmorph and come to crouch anyways. So I do that strat to kind of start off. Like I said, there are multiple ways of doing it. If you want to stop and farm these guys, this strat may not be the best option. But it kind of allows me to get up through this area and do this move quite consistently. This is actually kind of a hard shot where you jump up and shoot and kind of actually down grab up. But if you're doing it during the explosion of the power bomb, everything's a little bit laggy, so it actually gives you a little bit more time to do this strat, which I kind of enjoy. So a little down grab, I do that, and I down grab up. I shoot this guy, jump into the air, and lay a power bomb somewhere in the air, and then butt myself up against the wall here against the door, rather, in order to set up for the jump. We'll talk about the setup for the jump in a minute. A lot of people will use this as a visual cue for where to lay a power bomb. So if you lay it right there, or even a little bit to the left, it should still open the door. This is probably fine right there. Close, yeah, at least. So I know some people actually just come up here and go into ball and power bomb right there, and then work their way through. That's another option. It's not exactly what I do, but Kipp, do you have a different option for getting through this room?
Sure, I'll show something that I do just real quick. As Moss mentioned, there's many options. Generally speaking, one small thing that has to do with this room, but also just every other room that you want to practice, you want to try really hard to work on getting your entries like through doors as consistent as possible, because this room is maybe not as bad about it as some of the other ones, but if you practice a strat a certain way and it requires you to enter a certain way, but then in your run you don't enter that way, then the strat's not going to be what you expect it to be, right? So always be mindful about how you enter the rooms. Here, you wall jumped to enter the room. As you can see, we're in spin. So the way that I do it is I pretty much just do the bottom part like Moss talks about. You can, technically, like, if you're looking to farm a little bit, like if you're new to new route or whatever, one thing you can do is just reach your jump height and drop a power bomb. And if you do a full spin jump immediately, you will not hit the crab. And you do not want to get hit by these guys, but you can go ahead and kind of get up there. I wouldn't necessarily say this is fully like optimized or anything like that, but it's just, because I didn't put much time into the collection way of doing these strats, but it is something to consider. If you're nervous about Fantoon, you can get, some extra power bombs or some extra health here, but I pretty much do the same thing Moss does on the entry. And then when I get up here, I have one of basically two options. If my health or ammo, in particular regular missiles, and sometimes it depends on like low ice or new route, if my ammo or health is not exactly where I would prefer it to be, then sometimes I will run a strat that kills the key hunter up here. That way I have at least a shot at getting another piece of health or ammo. So I'll do something like that and then just hug the door. Usually you can get kind of a low 8-second time if you do everything pretty crisp. So something like that, which there are actually two ways of doing that. You can either shoot him, you can let go of the shot, or you can actually just pseudo screw straight through, because the pseudo screw does 200 damage as well. So it just depends on what you like. But what I've been doing lately is if I feel like my ammo and health are in pretty good position, I will actually skip shooting that guy. I kept getting a low 8, like a 8.10 or 8.05, doing it the other way. But usually if I skip that and just jump and drop a power bomb like that and stay in ball form, then I can get into the 7.4, potentially even 7.3 range, depending on how crisp it is. So it definitely saves some frames. You don't have a shot at the drop, and you also put yourself, technically at more jeopardy of potentially getting hit, which you don't want to do. But it is something to consider. If you feel like your ammo's in good shape, you can just jump right over. And as soon as the power bomb basically touches the door, you can unmorph and start your run through phase. So yeah, all right, I'm gonna turn it back over to you, Moss, for the moat.
The moat. Oh my gosh. Okay. There's a lot to say about the moat. Obviously, it is definitely the biggest stopping point for new runners. It's so easy to lose time here, and so I think one of the most important things when you're working on the moat is understanding when to bail out, because you can actually save time or mitigate your time losses if you're aware of something not working properly, and you can sort of bail out, turn around, reset, and get back into it rather than just continuing in the motions. A great example of that is the first jump. If you're trying to get the continuous wall jump, you have to hit a frame perfect jump right at the edge of here. It does take a while to know if you've actually landed that or not, but sometimes, you just jump really early. You jump up here and you're not even going to land on the top of the pipe here, which requires a long time to come back over here, reset yourself. So if, you have to kind of practice it, but I would suggest if you notice that you've jumped too early, turning around immediately and resetting yourself, getting into the habit of that is probably a good starting place, because like I said, there's many places that you can mess up this room and they end up costing you lots of time. So every time you notice immediately you've made a wrong move, being able to reset yourself saves huge amounts of time. So I would remember that to start with. Okay, so the timing of the jump here, you just have to butt up against the door rather, to set yourself up perfectly and run through the door. The jump actually takes a lot of time to kind of get used to exactly. In order to get the CWJ, you have to get a very frame perfect jump. Just to land on the platform, it's much more lenient. Practice your bomb jumping more than you worry about your CWJ. you're more likely to land not perfectly on the post. And so you're going to be in bomb jump territory. I would say 9 times out of 10, probably.
Moss, before you continue, real quick.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm bleeding over into your mic again. Basically, one thing I do want to point out is it is possible to miss the initial CWJ attempt and, for example, like run into the water. It is possible to jump back up and moonwalk onto basically a certain pixel and get a secondary chance at a CWJ from inside the room. However, I think it's even tighter. I think it's like, instead of being frame perfect into 2-frame, it's like frame perfect into frame perfect. Somebody, I could be wrong about that, but somebody who's really good to watch about that is Overfiend VIP. He currently has the 4th fastest time in any percent. He's working on getting a 41. He doesn't bomb jump. So, just to kind of show you what Behemoth was talking about earlier, there's always different methods and different ways, and people go about it, in a variety of sort of approaches. But generally speaking, if you don't feel like that's a good approach for you, then I would definitely recommend learning the bomb jump, even though it's awkward at first, because the reality is it's hard to get a frame perfect jump consistently. That's just the simple reality. So horizontal bomb jumping is a great thing to put time into.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so I'm actually on the pixel right now. I kind of moonwalk back into the door, and this is a location that you can reset and do the exact same jump, and you should be able to potentially get a CWJ from here, like that. So let's talk about bomb jumping first, because I think it is definitely if you learn how to bomb jump well, you are at least doubling the number of runs that are getting past this point. At least doubling, especially at the beginning, because even if you don't feel consistent with let me load a different save state. Even if you feel really inconsistent with the CWJ, if you feel good on the bomb jump, even if you made the jump, the frame perfect jump that allows you to CWJ, you don't have to. You can still land on the post and do a bomb jump if that's what you prefer. And I think it's actually, in fact, what Behemoth tends to prefer as well, or at least at one point he definitely preferred just. See, there's the frame perfect jump. This is how I would CWJ. But if you want to just land here, all you have to do is break out of spin. So you can do that with any of the either angle up or angle down. Or you can use up, you can use shot, anything that breaks you out of spin, and you'll still land on this platform. So even if you got the perfect jump and you don't feel like landing the CWJ, you can always land and go for a bomb jump from here. So 3 bumps that you have to deal with to do a horizontal bomb jump. There's a lot of in-depth tutorials about this, but there's a couple of things just in general I think are important to kind of be aware of. I think the first one is just getting used to knowing if you've laid your second bomb properly. You want to lay the second bomb essentially as the first bomb explodes. So as you're getting blasted to the right, you should see your second bomb being laid as well. I generally try to lay it in a way that I can actually visually see the first bomb and the second bomb. It almost looks like the bomb moves a little bit up and to the right. So I'll see if I can land it for you. So that was actually pretty close, but in that case, it may be hard to see, but the bomb was actually, it gets like a little bit higher because I'm actually in the air when I lay that second bomb. You don't have to lay it above and to the right of the first bomb. You can, in fact, lay it in the exact right position if you're timing your bomb very, very close to when the first bomb explodes. But if I feel that something's off, I immediately bail out and try to get back onto the post. Being able to bail out if you don't feel the first 2 bombs were set up properly is really, really handy. Again, missing a HBJ, it takes a huge amount of time. Get the bomb underneath the post, climb back up, reset yourself, get back there. So if you are feeling iffy on your initial setup, bailing out and landing back on the post is probably the best thing that you can do to save time or mitigate the time losses you'll have. So as soon as I feel that something's off on the second bomb placement, I hold left and I unmorph as I land on the post. Unmorphing actually keeps you from getting propelled away again on the second bomb. So if I feel I did it wrong, I just come back and unmorph. And in that unmorphing process, I don't get grabbed by the second bomb and get sent off again. So it's a good thing to practice. If you feel like you did it too early, see, that was actually a different problem that we'll deal with. But if you feel you did it too early, bailing out and getting back is a really important thing to start working on. That was way too late, so I bailed out. That was pretty good, but I actually did the other problem, which we'll talk about as well. So working on bailing out, really important. The next thing to kind of understand is how neutral bomb jumps work versus like a moving bomb jump. The way that you're facing is really, really important in bomb jumps. You always, in this situation, want to be facing right before the bomb goes off. And you can tell immediately if you're facing the wrong way, because the screen will actually scroll in a weird way. If you're facing to the right, you'll notice that the screen immediately starts moving to the right. But if I face left, you'll notice the screen kind of judders to the left and then sort of starts moving to the right. And that's a signal. Like, you can't really tell which way you're facing when you're in your ball form. You can do it based off the inputs, but sometimes you accidentally miss turning around or whatever, and you're facing the wrong way. And so it feels weird. You see the camera suddenly judder to the left and then to the right. If that happens, I know I'm facing the wrong way, and I bail out immediately. So again, things go wrong, go back to the post, try to unmorph on the post is the first thing you want to kind of work on. So learning when to lay the second bomb, it takes practice for sure. And it's just getting used to, if you think you laid it properly, try to move on to the next step. And if you think it's too early or too late, just get back to the post. The third bomb is a little bit harder to really explain the timing of the placement. When I'm in the air, I push left and fire at the same time to move myself back. What else am I missing, Kipp? There's a lot of stuff to talk about. Oh, I guess where you want to land on the bomb is really, really important as well. I think Static 9 has a tutorial that talks about this. When you come back to the post for the second bomb, you want to sort of position your sprite sort of at like the 1:30 position. If the bomb was a clock, you don't want to be at 12 o'clock, because if you're at 12 o'clock, you get bombed straight up. You want to be a little bit to the right of 12 o'clock on the bomb clock, essentially. So when you come back, that's kind of where you want to be positioning yourself, just to the right, not immediately on top of the bomb. So that's a lot of information already. There's a couple of more important things that we need to talk about, but practicing landing your first two bombs and bailing out, I think, is a really good starting point. So let's assume you're moving forward. You've laid your first two bombs properly. You think you've laid your third bomb properly, and we're going for the final attack, getting over the moat. It's very important to remember that as you're coming back to the left, so this is, you've laid your three bombs, you're on your way back to the post to get propelled by the second bomb again. You have to turn around. You have to turn and face right. Because you're heading left to get back to the bomb. Before the bomb goes off, you have to turn around. It's very important that you do it before the bomb goes off. So I actually do a really quick tap right to just turn myself around. And after the bomb explodes, I hold right. So maybe watch my inputs a little bit, and you'll see that there's like a very small tap to the right and then a holding of right afterwards. Sort of like that. I got bombed straight up on the third bomb. That just has to do with the bomb placement of the third bomb. Sometimes if you mistime it, you get bombed straight up. And again, that's bailout. Get back to the post, try again. So maybe a little too early on the... There we go. So it's kind of hard to explain. Again, it's hard to explain while doing it. One of the most important things, watch the inputs. maybe I'll do it a few more times to kind of explain it. Is there anything else you want to add to that, Kipp? Because there's already a lot of information, and it's hard to. I don't want to oversaturate the information at this point.
Sure, I'll say some things about both the bomb jump and CWJ real quick. And of course, now that I'm in the moment, having to actually talk to people about this, some of the methods or things that I look at are probably not going to work. But let me start very briefly with something about CWJ, just so I have an easy time with the save state. I mentioned this to some people on Discord recently about when you get the right jump to set up the CWJ attempt out of the fanfare. I actually don't hold any button until after I hear the music of the fanfare end.
Oh yeah, me too. That's the stat I use as well.
Right, and so just as a quick heads up, let me see if I can get the jump to kind of show you. Okay, so right now I have the correct jump to get the CWJ. And what you'll note is this is true, in the regular game as well. You can hold any button you want in the middle of the fanfare, nothing will happen. But once the fanfare ends, the next button that you press will end the fanfare. And I'm fairly confident that it's any button. And so this is what people use a lot of times for certain strats to queue up like a move, right? So like even if I press select, the fanfare ends and the text box goes away, right? And so the only button that really matters in terms of coming out is the right directional button, okay? So I personally don't hold it. Like it shows up at the top left that I'm holding it, but I'm actually not. That's just the game like reading, what the input was before you got the fanfare. And so what I do is I don't really have a specific visual cue. I know everybody's got something different. But because I wait for the fanfare to end, it gives me a little bit more of a physical timing. I would say lately, like I can't really prove it right now, but I would say lately, my success rate on this particular part of the trick, jump the CWJ portion, is probably about 70% or so. And it just comes from kind of internal timing, doing the same thing over and over again. So I kind of have a feel of pressing right with my left thumb and then pressing the jump button with my right thumb. And I am looking at the screen. I'm not saying that I'm not looking at anything at all, but I feel like, for the most part, a lot of my success with the trick comes from just sort of the timing in general. So I'm not going to sit here and do it over and over and try to prove to you. And, sometimes you go through phases where you just, you're a little off and you don't get it. But one other thing, like if you can tell that you got it, right, and then jump, I missed it that time. I'll try to get it at least one more time. So yeah, there you go. There's that. But let's imagine for a minute that that you didn't get the jump. Like, okay, let's say this jump right here, okay? I can tell that I didn't get on the ledge. This is just my personal way of approaching it. I break the fanfare with the R button. And the reason I do that is because, number one, it's going to break, and I just hold it during the fanfare if I know I don't have the CWJ. But I always hold R or L to angle to move, because one thing that newer players might not be aware of is, if you hold angle up or angle down and then you press left or right, Samus moves much more delicately. She's not nearly as violent in her movement. And so I will hold that and then kind of scoot myself over to position myself on the pedestal here. And so what I'm about to show y'all with my horizontal bomb jump is probably going to seem totally crazy. I don't even know technically if this is even a real thing, but for whatever reason, in my mind, it seems to work, okay? I would really recommend people to try to figure out, like, don't just aimlessly try to figure tricks out. Try to find something, like some kind of cue or something or feeling that you have to try to make it as consistent as possible. But if you look at Samus's morphing ball, it's actually bouncing a little bit at a certain tempo. Okay, I'm a musician. I don't know why, but I'm always trying to find like rhythmic ways of applying music to the game. But she's kind of like she's kind of like bouncing a little bit.
Oh, I love that.
Okay.
That's cool.
And so, and obviously your visual interpretation of the tempo is not necessarily going to be exactly on point, right? But I kind of like try to get this percussion rhythm where I'm like, like I'm trying to drop the bombs at a do da do da da do da do da da. in rhythm with her tempo. Do, 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 do. Bomb, bomb, bomb. Okay? And it'll probably take me a few tries to get it, but here's the basic premise, okay? Well, that was a really bad attempt. Actually, let me set up the save state now. Okay, here we go. There, got it. Do, 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 do. Okay, I know that sounds absurd, but it works for me. Okay, so
bomb jump. It's bomb jump.
Right, exactly. And so I don't sing it, in the middle of runs, obviously. And this is the first time I've even told anybody about this, but it just worked for me. So another thing that goes with it is, if you look at the bomb, it starts to flash just slightly before it jumps over or before it explodes. And you can kind of use that as a bit of a cue to go ahead and lay the next one. But you got to be pretty tight on it. Like, I don't really trust this as the only method to use to do this trick. But that's something to think about. And the only other major thing I would say to pay attention to, other than what Moss has mentioned, is I use a bit of a different grip on my D-pad for this. I am really cognizant about tapping the D-pad as opposed to kind of putting my whole thumb on there, because sometimes if you're not careful, you will press up in the middle of this process, and as soon as you press up and unmorph, it's over. And most of the time when you unmorph, you're going to fall in the moat. So like I actually practice, like even that right there, just even just the small tap to get into position. And one more philosophical thing that I had to learn and kind of work my way through is be confidently wrong. If you are approaching this trick and you're hesitating and you're concerned, like I'm not sure if I got it or whatever, you can bail out as best you can, but I would just say, once you practice enough, trust yourself and just go for it. And if you're wrong, you're wrong. You know what I mean? Like, it would just be better than to like mess it up, to have it where you could save it and then to bail out on it and then potentially fall in the moat in a worse way or something like that. So that's my method. And just be careful about the unmorphing process at the end as well, because you can fall right here, and that's the worst. So yeah, all right, Moss, I'm going to toss it back over to you.
Great. Only a couple of little things to talk about at this point. When it's the little thing, but I definitely move as far to the right as I feel comfortable on this post. Like, some people will just go right in the middle, and it's fine from here. But sometimes if you don't land it perfectly, you might just miss the edge here. So I just make sure that when I'm landing this this first power bomb or the first bomb, I'm just a little bit more to the right, just to give myself a little bit more, like, my starting position is a little more right. So it's, if things aren't optimally done, I will still probably land it. I'm going to go back to what Kipp was talking about with the triggering, exiting a fanfare back into playing. And I agree entirely with doing a CWJ, not holding and buffering holding the right input. Because if you're just holding through the fanfare the right input, you're just waiting on an arbitrary visual cue. Like, you kind of know how long it's going to take before the dialog box disappears and you push the jump button, but it's a very extended period. So rather than doing that, when you know that the fanfare is over, pressing right and jump in a rhythm, right jump, you can actually just get used to the timing of those two inputs. So yeah, it's a muscle combination more than it is kind of getting used to the duration of how long you have to wait from the fanfare.
And Moss, real quick, just to kind of piggyback on what you said, I want to be clear, because everybody, not everybody, but there are often people who try to, nitpick different comments and stuff like that. Look, in theory, if you're in the middle of a run, if you're trying to count every frame, then holding, right through the fanfare that gets you out of it the fastest is definitely going to be the fastest way possible, right? But you're only going to lose a few frames if you wait for the fanfare to end. And I'm just saying, for me personally, I'm not pursuing a world record time. Yes, I want to go as fast as I can, but for a room like this where if you miss the strat, you lose 10 seconds or whatever, I will trade 10 frames for consistency every day of the week. So that's just something to think about.
Yeah. And that comes back to the thing I was kind of mentioning before of like risk management, that, if you're buffering is risking 10 frames or risking 10 seconds to make up 10 frames. So it may not be necessary for you to do it, especially if your consistency is really high, doing the non-buffered attempt. So just something to kind of to remember. For those of you who know I love metronomes, I do love metronomes. It works here too. The beats per minute is 150. So if you want to get this speed in your brain, that's 150. So what I'm here, and if I get the jump properly, using 150 as a resource, right, jump. Oops, maybe a little off that time. That's the speed that I'm not actually using a metronome in my runs, but while the fanfare is going on, I start trying to remember that speed. So do 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 do, bop 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 bop, right, jump. Okay, so I kind of wait until the end of the fanfare to sort of start that mental clock of how fast I should be doing my timing. As a musician, I have a relatively good ability to remember a tempo. But I think most people have that as well with practice. So it's something like if you feel like using that as as a resource before you do a run, or even on the elevator up to the moat, putting that on and just listening to it, just kind of remind yourself of what the speed of it is. It's really easy when you're excited, if you've got a good run going, that your heart rate's going a little faster and you might accidentally push things a little too quickly because you're rushing things at that time. So having a metronome that actually reminds you might help. It might not, but that's all I think we'll say on the moat. It takes a lot of practice. That's basically it. And when you practice it, I think it's good to work on bailing out as much as possible, because you are going to miss it a lot. And the sooner you can recover and get back and try a second time, ultimately the more time you're going to be saving in the grand scheme.
Yeah, and one thing real quick, Moss, part of the reason that we're putting an emphasis on some of these rooms, like in terms of new route strat chat, is because, sure, there's, different strats for every room. We could talk about every single room. However, there are some rooms like Moat here and like Red Tower that are pretty much like mandatory. You really want to make sure that you feel comfortable in those rooms. Just like 3 or 4 off the top of my head where I can think of like losing a run. And I don't just mean dying. I mean like making a mistake so big that you end up losing like 10 to 15 seconds, which is awful, right? There's Red Tower, you've got Moat, even the Ocean to a degree, but it's not really that bad once you get used to it. But like worst room in the game can literally be the end of your run. It's just one room, it's one strat, it's 10 to 11 seconds. And if you don't feel comfortable with it, then, imagine getting there and only having a 50-50 shot at getting it, then you're in bad shape. So, you want to try to work as much as possible in your preparation on, yes, you want to practice every room, but there are some that you want to feel very confident about because you don't want to just hemorrhage time.
Yeah, it's definitely like these are the sticking points of this category in particular that we're kind of trying to attack at this point. You want to go on to the next one, Kipp? Do you want to attack Attic next?
Yeah, sure. Let me get this set up real quick. I'll come back over to my there we go. Let me get my Attic save state set up here. And let me go ahead. I don't know if I turned the game sounds back on or off. Okay, they are on. Okay. So real quick, just as a quick heads up, one small thing before Attic here is this is like the last portion of the wreck ship shaft. You have kind of like 2 options when you get to the part where these 2 atomics are kind of in your way. Most people will just sort of turn into a ball before doing the clip up here. But if you're like really low on health, for example, and you know that you have to farm some health to get ready for the bowling section, this is a section where I will sometimes fire a super and then collect the drop. But if I'm like full on everything, then I usually just go underneath and, you know, the best that I can. But a lot of times this atomic will drop health if you're not full. It can drop, you know, I think a power bomb and I think a super and even missiles are on the table, but I believe that a large health is the biggest, you know, drop on the table, unless I'm mistaken. So anyway, to get ready for attic, remember that in new route, you don't have any movement items when you get to this portion. I mean, we're sitting here looking at it. You only have charge, morphing ball, and bomb. And I want to go ahead and tell you up front that there are a ton of ways, like little nuanced things that you can do to approach this particular room. Zost, for example, has a strat that he prefers that requires a very quick power bomb drop at the beginning of the room, and then later he lines up a super on the last atom and the last key hunter at the same time.
It requires crazy precision through pretty much the whole room, though.
Yeah, it's not just, yeah, it's like the whole thing has to be chained together, because those key hunters are moving even when they're off screen, whereas the atoms, unless I'm mistaken, I don't think they're moving unless they're on your screen. So Behemoth has a way that he does it that's really interesting with with the way that he fires regular missiles at a lot of things, especially at the end. So I can't go through every single strat for every single person. I'll just show you a couple of small things that you can do to at least get through the room the best you can. So my main goal is, number one, you know, when you get up here, you have to be careful that you get... In fact, this is actually kind of good for me to go in with not full health. The one thing that you want to kind of focus on at first is you need to get a really good jump through this door. Because what's going to happen is this. If you jump too far and you end up rubbing up against this wall, then you can't... like, sometimes you'll accidentally do this number right here, and then you can't really get a mock ball, right? And you don't want to get hit by these key hunters, because I think he did 60 damage to me. So
this is a very dangerous place to start taking damage, for sure.
Yeah, so one of the first and foremost things you want to focus on is just, you know, starting here, you know, getting up here and making sure you understand what it's supposed to feel like to jump through that room. And that should be okay. You know, it doesn't have to be perfect. But the first main thing I focus on is letting go of jump and then pressing jump again to get the mock ball, right? Like, remember, sometimes in learning strats like this, it's all about chaining things together. You don't have to do the whole thing together at once, you know? So this is the main movement that I want to get here. And I just wait until I get, you know, on the ground to drop my power bomb. And then I just roll underneath the atom and fire one regular missile at him. What that should do is it should double hit all the key hunters, and it should provide enough damage on the atom to kill it. If you don't shoot this atom, he won't die. Okay? And you want to shoot him prior to the power bomb getting there. Now then, if you turn around, you can basically run through the rest of these key hunters, because you're going to be getting the iframes, okay? So long story short, that's how you kind of start the room off. Now the easiest way to do the rest of the room is probably just to use supers on all three of the atoms, and then one on the key hunter with an extra missile. That's probably like the most sort of beginner friendly method. I still technically use it a good bit of the time. I've kind of built my run around, you know, just doing it this way to get consistency just about every time. And then later I farm more supers. But basically, you fire a super right around here before that, and you can angle up to get that guy. And then this last one, a visual cue that I kind of think about is this blue screen in the background. If you fire your two supers at the same time, right around the top of that blue screen, it's probably going to hit the atom, and then the second one will hit the key hunter, and then the key hunter requires one more shot with a regular missile. So here you go. This is what the room should look like. If I do it this way, I should be roughly around like a 10, maybe a little bit above a 10. But again, this is not like the single most optimal way of doing this room, but it's still good enough to get you through most situations, right? And you even have the option of farming that last drop if you want to from the atom. Let me try to do it correctly one time without farming anything before I show you a little quick method to get some stuff. So yeah, there you go, 10, right? Let's imagine though that you got screwed by a fan tune. You need some health. you can kind of take this a little bit slower and jump a little bit higher and collect both of the drops from the atoms, and you can even double back and grab that one if there's one. Now, it certainly adds a couple seconds, but at the same time, you know, you're coming up on bowling, which requires at minimum 121 damage, or excuse me, 121 health to get through. So, you know, you always want to be cognizant of that, making sure that you're where you need to be. Plus, the more health you have and the more ammo you have, it does actually set up things in the future. And so it just comes down to philosophically, how many corners do you want to cut? How many things do you want to skip? Yes, sometimes you can skip certain ammo, but at the same time, sometimes picking up ammo might actually make something in the future a little faster. So it's just something you need to think about all the time. All right, Moss, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you show some different methods for that room too.
Great. One thing to kind of, when you're leaving Fantoon, something that I am always checking leaving Fantoon is how many power bombs I have. And if you have 2 power bombs leaving Fantoon, it's not a big deal, but it's definitely worth remembering that you're going to have to probably change the number of item selects that you use at the beginning of the attic. If you have more than, if you have 2 power bombs leaving Fantoon, you're going to use one on the way up to the attic, and then you'll use your final one in this room right here at the very beginning. If you have more than 2, if you have 2 or more power bombs coming into the attic, you have to push item select twice. Versus if you only have 1, you're going to have to press item select only once to get to missiles. So it's just something when you're rolling underneath here. I always remind myself entering the attic how many power bombs I have. Because since the attic moves really quickly, and if you mess things up or you kind of forget which weapon you're on, and you sometimes have to change your weapons a lot, it's really easy to lose time because, I'm on super missiles instead of missiles. And so it's just something to be aware of as you're moving through. Okay. Kipp was kind of saying, with supers, if you jump high, you can farm all the atomics. I think they technically can drop supers. They're not a very high percentage chance to do it. The key hunters have a better chance of dropping supers, but it's not a huge chance. So you will be using a lot of supers in this room. You can mitigate that by the number of missiles you use. I tend to super the first atomic on the way to the left. Then I kill the second one with 3 missiles. And then the last 2 enemies, I use 2 supers and 1 missile. And I do it in a very, very safe way, especially at the end. So I'll run you through it a couple of times just to show it to you. Arm pump. I'm going to use a super here and grab this drop. Switch to missiles. 1, 2, 3 shots. And then 1, 2. Oops, I accidentally misfired. I should have fired 2 supers there. I only fired 1. But the very end, I do 2 supers, and I land usually somewhere around here. This will hit the atomic and kill it, and it'll hit the key hunter and take it down to 100 health. And then switch to missiles. I actually do it with an item cancel. So I item cancel and then press item select. So I have a flashing missile. And then I jump again, fire twice. The missile kills the key hunter. The P shot opens the door. And if you do it in this way, I actually jump and grab the drop that the atomic made as well. So it's a little slower to do it this way. Very consistent and very ammo conscious, I would say. So 1, 2. Oh, I missed it again. Anyways, you notice I don't actually move very quickly left when I'm starting to fire there. And it just allows me to farm the atomic. 1, 2, 1, 2. And that way, actually, I'm grabbing both drops in that situation. So it's 11 seconds, maybe a second slower, really consistent that way, though. And in that case, I'm farming quite a lot of health and possibly a couple of missiles in that point. All of your ammo and health counts at this point. So it's really important to kind of be aware of how much you have and how much you're going to need moving forward. So there are other strats to look at. That's probably the one I would suggest in terms of a really consistent way. If you want to use 2 supers for both of these guys, that's also fine. 1, 2. Man, I don't know why I'm messing that up. But 2 supers and then a missile to kill off the key hunter at the end. And it doesn't matter if you fire 2 supers, which super hits the atomic and which one hits the key hunter in the background. If you miss the atomic, it's almost certainly hitting the key hunter behind. Let's should we move on? Let's some Kipp, you said you had something at Spazer you wanted to talk about, which I'm not certain on, but
Yeah, in fact, why don't we kind of stop at that point, because what we're going to do this sort of quote-unquote season with Strat Chat is we're going to try to go about an hour and a half or so. And again, we're going to leave a little bit open for Q&A at the end. We're running around, an hour and 34 minutes roughly right now. So we're going to continue this the next time we have Strat Chat, which obviously we took a long break. You know, Moss was gone for the summer and we've been pretty busy this semester, but we're going to get back to doing some pretty regularly. I don't know for sure if we're going to be able to do it like exactly every Thursday, every other week or whatever, but we've got plans to bring on other guests, some of which I've already spoken to, some of which I have not spoken to yet, but I'm hoping that they will agree to come on. In particular, I want to give a shout out to Z Music, Jack, and Cutie, who's actually in chat right now. When we first started Strat Chat, there was not a 43 old route that had ever been run. As of 2 days ago, we now have 3. Cutie just got his 43 old route, and Jack has a world record of I want to say like a 43.20, something like that. So we want to bring in some of those guys to talk to them about some of the updates to old route and different approaches and stuff like that. But we're going to try to limit things to about an hour and a half, and that'll also kind of let us do a little bit deeper dive on some of these concepts. So next time we have a show, we're going to continue talking about some of the core rooms and new route. I just wanted to show something very briefly. I'm going to cut it over to my screen real quick. I just want to show something small real quick that kind of shows a bit of a philosophical thing. Whenever you are getting Spazer, which, you know, is sort of like the quintessential weapon, I guess, of this particular route, there are actually a few small things. I was looking at it recently for approaches to enter the room, and I just kind of wanted to point it out because it is something that does not, you know, actually happen in very many people's old route runs, you know, once they hit certain thresholds or whatever. So let me get down.
Yeah, don't get Spazer, kids. Don't get Spazer.
let me get down to the Spazer room real quick. Okay, I want to make a save state as I'm falling here. Okay, so let me show just a couple things to think about. Number one, you'll note that if you were to run through this door, it would require a pretty hefty door fix. So, you know, one thing you want to do is you want to practice looking at what kind of jump do you want to get to fix the door as much as possible. I mean, most everybody jumps through this anyway. But so that's just one small thing to think about. And then here, entering this room is actually, in my opinion, a bit tricky. There are multiple different strategies. I've seen a lot of even the top players have different methods. The vast majority of people are going to try to utilize some kind of deboost. Okay, some people like to deboost directly off of the body of the bat. Some people like to shoot and then deboost off of the pellets. And, you know, what I'm about to say, I don't want anybody to take it the wrong way. Those are definitely the best methods. They're the fastest. We could sit here and go through them. They're definitely the best, right? But sometimes, depending on, you know, your skill level, or even just in some ways like what you sort of naturally feel comfortable with, there are different ways to do strats, and some of them are going to be a little bit slower, but you might make up some time in the next room depending on how you enter. Or it might be that running a slightly slower strat that works 95% of the time for you is better than a 50-50, you know, fast or slow. Because a lot of times, like if you go for some of these deboosts, for example, and then you miss, like it can be like really slow trying to get back over here for certain things. Or, you know, you have a chance at like getting knocked into the spikes or something. I mean, there's just all different kinds of ways for different things that can happen. So I'm going to show a strat that I've been working on lately that's really simple and easy, but I find kind of neat, and I learned something about it in terms of how it leads into Spazer. So if you can just kind of like not shoot anything other than the door and then jump over, it's definitely slower, okay? And it requires a little bit of feel to jump, you know, not too high to touch a bat and not too low to land in the water. However, the sort of interesting thing is you can door check this door, which gets you inside quicker. Okay, it's a little bit quicker. But the cool part is the way that the game puts you in this door. If you door check it, you actually have a little bit of movement space. to where you can do an instantaneous like run and wall jump or whatever, or spin jump, to get the next portion of the strat. So let me do it a couple times, and you'll kind of see hopefully what I'm talking about. Clearly, to do it this way, you kind of want to land low in the door, but you can run straight to the left and initiate your spin jump wall jump process, which is pretty neat. The only reason I mention that is just because if you look at the totality, if you will, of every way that you can mess up a strat, there's actually a lot of ways to mess this up if you enter like this. Because, if you're holding jump, you can just press away. That's one mechanic maybe some people don't know. Like, if you just hold jump and then press away from Samus, she'll instantaneously wall jump. But a lot of times people will shoot and then they'll try to move. But sometimes if they jump a little too fast, they end up doing this number right here. And then you're like trying to adjust and you're losing a second. So for me, it just was really comfortable to just run straight, at the left door, like it's foolproof basically. So that was just one small thing that you could consider. Up here, when you drop this bomb, you want to avoid getting hit by the bomb because you'll get bounced up, but you still want to shoot this guy, right? So I'm not exactly sure the mechanics of why, but if you're shooting during the bomb, it's like and you're crouched. I don't know if it works if you're standing up. I guess it does, but anyway, it's an uninterruptible animation, I suppose. And so you basically want to time it. I use a two-shot method, so I shoot the block right before it explodes, and then I shoot a secondary shot, and that stops me from from bouncing up. And that's a pretty standard thing. You'll see a lot of other guys do it. Just wanted to point out how it works. And then basically, you got to have a super missile to get in this room. So I try to unmorph as I'm landing, and then I try to correct the door as best I can. I'm trying to jump in that door in a way where, like if you just straight up run into the door, for example, you'll note that the door transition is actually pretty severe. It goes from 42 to 77. For those counting at home, that is over half a second. So you want to be really cognizant about things like that, especially as you get better and you start, sort of putting together your idea of how you want to get through rooms. Looking at those door transitions is going to be a really big portion of that. So I just kind of wanted to point that out for newer players in general. This is sort of one room that represents a bigger concept. Sometimes jumping through a door is going to be a better option to save time, depending on what you're doing with the next room or how much the door transition has to go through. So this is just another one of those small rooms, when you're doing a new route that you won't typically see an old route. The only other kind of small thing here in this particular section is when you're leaving this room, your initial shot will break. If you're running and you just jump, your initial shot will break that block. And you can pretty easily mock ball, like if you're not necessarily counting every frame, you can just hold jump the entire time and even bonk your head on the ceiling, which is a method I used when I first learned how to mock ball to get the early supers. You can do that here, and it's really not too bad. And then you just want to drop your bomb basically in line with this sort of square block that's above me. You can see that there's a long block and then there's like another square above me. This is where you will fall. And if you start the process of holding your charge, by the time you get to the bottom, you'll be good to kill that cack. And you try to turn too. You try to turn through this breakable block here. I guess it's not breakable block. What are these things called again? I forgot. Crumble block. That's right. So the crumble block, you can sort of turn through it to fall a little bit faster, and that should put you in position to be able to shoot the cack attack and sort of make your way, through the rest of the room. So that's just something small. Depending on how you do this room, you're not going to necessarily lose a ton of time, but there's a few small things you might want to look at here to get more comfortable.
It's definitely worth commenting on it. You may not be able to see it because Kipp's sprite is sort of covered by the wall in that section, but as soon as he drops through the hole where the bomb blows up, he's unmorphing immediately, because if you unmorph later, you're actually going to break your fall momentum, and so it'll actually take more time. So you want to unmorph immediately at the top as the bomb explodes. Actually, if you switch to me for a second, there's just like one little thing that I kind of do that's just slightly different.
Yeah, sure. Go right ahead.
So I actually just, after I lay that bomb, I actually go to the right. Oh, I need space. After getting laying the bomb, I actually move off to the right here. So I'll lay a bomb and I'll just go over here a little bit. And just before it's about to explode, I start moving left. And that way I fall down into the pit. And as I unmorph, I'm already facing to the left, because you need to eventually face to the right, and you use the turnaround to do that in order to shoot the cack attack. I just find that if I come here and I'm just sort of trying to position myself, often I have to unmorph, turn left, and then turn around again in order to get through the crumble block. So I just lay a bomb, come to the right, hold left, unmorph, and then do a turnaround like that. It's, again, these are all little things, but it's good to remember that even on small little things, you can change things just a little bit. I don't really like turning around twice in the air. Okay, I'm going to move a little bit to the right, and that way I come into that drop facing left already. That's a small thing, but our host today, or our guest today, was Behemoth, and Behemoth is kind of the example of doing it his own way. And so, don't necessarily go off of the one or two things you've seen someone do. Feel free to just like take the basic idea and morph it a little bit, change it a little bit. Behemoth is a great example of the climb. Until I saw Behemoth race, I just assumed that all top players wall jumped up the climb, and Behemoth doesn't. And I don't do it anymore because I'm way more consistent doing ledge grabs. But it's just a good example that, like, even at top levels, you can play the game you want, the way you want to play it, and there's no plus or minus in terms of how well you can play the game. Essentially, this game is open to everyone, really.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll kind of close with that. Basically, if anybody has any questions or anything specific, feel free to let us know. A lot of times we'll look at things that people request, and we'll cover them in future strat chats and stuff like that. But again, to the point Moss just made, and kind of using Behemoth as an example, this is the kind of game that has so many options available to you that it kind of cracks me up to a degree when people that either don't run it or maybe run other games come in and say, what's the optimal strat? They'll be like, what's the optimal strat in this room? Because there's just so much variability on what you're trying to accomplish and how you want to enter the room, how you want to exit the room. Are you farming here for a specific reason? And a lot of times it comes down to your specific run. I'm not saying don't watch the pros. I'm not saying don't look at the world records, but the flip side is, there's a reason why only 3 dudes currently have a 41 in this game and everybody else doesn't. It's because to put together the strats, in every single room required to get that kind of time is incredibly difficult. And if you, from the very beginning, are trying to run every world record strat that there is, I'm not going to try to stop you. If that's your thing, cool. But it's probably going to be pretty frustrating. And these guys that are really good at this game have been playing for a long time and have sort of, worked their way into it. So, really build your run around what you think's going to work for you. I had this conversation with Fuzda the other day. You would be surprised what kind of really good times you can run in this game with somewhat basic strats if you just do everything clean. You know what I mean? Most of the time when people suffer with their PB, it's not from bad strats. It's from not being able to execute the thing they're going for. And if you can't get the thing you're going for a majority of the time, it's probably hurting your run more than it's helping. The chances of getting 60 complex strats all perfectly in the same run is incredibly low. But that's not to discourage you from going for something difficult. But work yourself into it. Find what works for you. find what you think you can do that the really good players are doing, and kind of build your run from there. That's the great thing about this game is there's a giant cookbook, right? And you just got to figure out what kind of dish you want to make. So we'll stop it there. Moss, I'm going to let you have a quick last word.
Just a second, Kipp.
Yeah, go ahead.
You're right on the pulse with what you're saying about that, and doing the strats the way that you want to do them. But I think that also, like when you were talking about copying strats, that there is an organic process that goes into learning a new strat, and the strat that the top players are using now are not necessarily the strats they started with. And in going from strat A to strat B to finally their ultimate strat C, which is the fastest, they're learning little things like, why am I turning around here? Why am I jumping here? Why am I jumping low versus jumping high? And in taking the time, rather than just emulating, just trying your own ways, you're getting deeper inside the actual understanding of the game. Not just like, this is the way I do it because I saw you jump here. It's like, I'm jumping here because I've tried doing it jumping here and I don't like it as much. It doesn't work for my hand. And so now, not only do you have a strat that is tailored to yourself because you sort of learned from your own mistakes, but you have like an inside understanding and a deep memory of how you're supposed to be doing those strats.
Yeah, dude, I completely agree with that. So it's a beautiful game, get in and experiment. That's why it's so much fun. So
yeah,
well, guys,
why we're doing this all the time, right?
Exactly. I mean, and again, the whole point of Strat Chat came to be because of people asking us a bunch of questions about how we did strats and stuff, and that just goes to show you the deep level that exists in this game. I mean, I'm not even anywhere close. Like, I'm not even in the ballpark of the times that the world record holders are able to put in a lot of categories. And yet at the same time, there are still people that want to ask questions from me. I asked a ton of questions from you when I first started. I asked questions from all kinds of people. So there's just different ways. It's a really cool thing to enjoy the game by learning how different people approach the game and stuff like that. So but Moss, thank you for another great episode. It was fun to finally get back on the saddle, so to speak, and knock out one of these strat chats.
Yeah, you too, Kipp.
And we'll look forward to another one in the future. Super huge thank you to Behemoth for coming on. That was very kind of him. He doesn't need us to explain to people who he is or what he's about, but you guys definitely check him out. His current 80% grind is really fun to watch, and he's a really cool dude too, and very, very selfless in terms of helping people out on the Discord and talking to people about strats and stuff like that. So thank you, Behemoth. And guys, we're going to cut into the sort of exit sequence. Hope you enjoyed the episode, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys. Bye.